following podcast is part of the Underdog Sports Podcasting Network. For a full list of our shows, as well as breaking sports news and engaging feature stories, visit us at www.theunderdogsports.com.
Talking around the bases with Ryan Carter and Logan Smith.
Welcome to episode 2 of Talking Around the Bases. I'm your host, Ryan Carter, and alongside me is the ever so knowledgeable Logan Smith. Logan, it's been a crazy first week, wouldn't you say?
Oh man, it's been awesome. We really appreciate the support from everybody. I think we can both say that it's done much better in views than what we were expecting. We were kind of just putting it together for some fun, but we really appreciate everybody checking it out and giving us some great feedback so far.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know it is something that we were talking about all last year, like before the season started, and we never really got around to doing it. But yeah, we just wanted to thank everyone who supported us. Basically on that first podcast, yeah, like you said, we never expected to get so far so soon, and thanks to everyone who viewed it, subscribed, commented on YouTube, and as well as a big thanks out to Underdog Sports Network, which we were talking about, who actually reached out to us, and we're going to be on their website, so you'll hear that bumper before our podcast, and you can check us out at that website as well as YouTube as well.
Yeah, and if you have any comments or any suggestions for anything you want us to talk about, comment on our YouTube video or even hit us up at talkingaroundthebases@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you, and we really appreciate anything that you guys could send to us. Yeah,
definitely. If there's anything that we can bring up or talk about or maybe something we didn't cover, we can always go over it on our next episode. So with that being said, I did see a lot of comments in YouTube, and I know we had discussed it during the week, just about, letting everyone know who we are, or a little bit about us. So I just wanted to first start off with just some simple stuff, like who our favorite teams are, maybe what got you into baseball, as well as a favorite game that you've been to.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. You can go ahead and go first if you want to.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So my favorite team is the Baltimore Orioles for the American League, and the Cincinnati Reds for the National League. What got me into baseball was actually Cal Ripken Jr., so it kind of ties in with the Orioles a little bit. And I played for 14 years, so I've always been around baseball and liked it. And actually my favorite game I've ever been to is a Reds game. It was between Atlanta and Cincinnati, and they were down by 1 in the bottom of the 9th, and Devin Mesoraco comes up with 2 outs, and Craig Kimbrell is obviously in pitching, and it's a 3-2 count, and he smashes it out for a home run to tie it, and then Sin-Soo Choo follows up with a home run for a walk-off, and that place just went crazy. It was after a rain delay as well, so yeah, it was amazing atmosphere. What about you?
Well, I was born in '94, so the first couple years I didn't get to enjoy baseball too much, just a little bit too young.
Yeah.
I think one thing I always remember growing up as a kid was just hating the Yankees. I have no idea why. I didn't even have a favorite team because I just hated the Yankees. And then in '04, the biggest memory is obviously the Red Sox coming back from 3-0 down in the ALCS to end up beating the Yankees. So ever since then, I like the Red Sox. But then in 2005, whenever the Washington Nationals became a team, I instantly fell in love with them, and they've been my favorite team ever since. Actually, since '09, me and my father have been season ticket holders to them. So we go to quite a few games a year. With that being said, my favorite game I've ever been to, I think I have to pick 2, and it would be debut when he struck out 14 against the Pirates in 7 innings, or Max Scherzer's 20 strikeout game against the Tigers a couple years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say, I remember talking to you about the Max Scherzer game, so I know that has to be on your favorites list, because that game was crazy. And I mean, we all gotta kind of hate the Yankees a little bit, but I mean, they're because they're just too good, really. They are.
Yeah, we can agree on that at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like them. Don't get me wrong. I think they're very good, but I just don't care for them some years. But
I think it's that thing where you have to respect them. You respect them, but you definitely don't have to like them, and that's definitely the case with me.
Right, yeah, exactly. So basically, before we get jumped in on the AL West that we were going to be discussing this week, there's been a couple big things happening in the world of Major League Baseball after we did our first podcast. First being that the Cleveland Indians are, saying that they're no longer going to be using the Chief Wahoo logo come 2019, which, I mean, I'm kind of indifferent. It's just one of those logo things. It's kind of with the Washington Redskins, and I mean, I'm all for it, but that logo that they have was just a C's got to go. They got to come up with something better.
Yeah, I think they need a new primary logo for sure. I mean, it's definitely surprising with how long it's been around, but I mean, it's something that apparently some people got upset about, which then they're just going to go ahead and get rid of it. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with now.
Yeah, and a lot of people are thinking maybe it has tie-ins since they're granted the 2019 All-Star Game, so maybe this is just a way for them being like, all right, we'll take the 2019 All-Star Game, but we got to get rid of that logo, and we'll just see what they go with, going forward, or if they change their name, which I doubt they will, but a lot of people are speculating that might happen.
Now, speaking of recent news, since you're the Orioles fan, what do you think about them starting Manny Machado at shortstop opening day?
I'm indifferent. I think as of right now, he's a really good third baseman. I know it's his primary position. I know that that's where he wants to play, and it's going to help him with a contract after this year. I don't think the Orioles are going to sign him. My main concern is moving Tim Beckham from shortstop to third base, where he's only had 5 starts in his whole career, if he can handle it there. So that I don't have any doubt that Manny Machado can throw the ball and be
obviously
a Gold Glove caliber player at shortstop. But we'll just have to see how it goes out, and he might not even be there come opening day as well.
And since this isn't the NL West show, that was last week, but I don't know if you saw, but I think yesterday actually, or the day before, the Arizona Diamondbacks actually signed Alex Avila, the old Chicago Cubs catcher.
Yeah, and actually the Detroit Tigers catcher too. Yeah, that's something I actually had written down that, I'm guessing somebody in the Diamondbacks front office is listening to our first podcast where I was saying that they needed to upgrade their catcher position, and they do, because they get Alex Avila on a 2-year deal. Last year in 112 games, he had a .387 on-base percentage. League average, by the way, is .320, so he had a great on-base percentage. And, he has better hitting numbers than Chris Iannetta. However, it is a slight bit of a downgrade at defense.
But with the bat, especially in the Arizona Diamondbacks ballpark, I think that's going to be a good fit. And they still have Jeff Mathis for a defensive catcher whenever they need to go with that. So I think that's a really good signing for them. I think that'll really help out their lineup a lot. And as we mentioned, they did need an upgraded catcher.
Yeah, definitely. And that's I think it's going to be a huge, huge boost to them. And he played well with the Tigers, had a bunch of good years, so we'll see how that's going forward. But speaking of the AL West, we do have, probably the hottest team in baseball right now, the World Championship Houston Astros, who went 101-61. So 4 years ago, if I would have said that phrase to you, you probably would have thought I was crazy, because they just they were not good. They have not been good for a while, but these last couple of years, they really just starting to get it together. A lot of their young players are really putting it together. And mind you, they did a lot of that without Carlos Correa for a lot of that time, because he got injured with that thumb injury. And that's, hats off to them for winning the World Series, but they had a crazy year.
I think you can definitely look at their team, and you can tell that they did it through the draft. Now, like you said, a few years ago, they were absolutely terrible, tore it down completely. And with them being able to sign Jose Altuve as an amateur free agent, then they drafted George Springer, Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, Dallas Keuchel. Those are all draft picks, and that's what you need to do whenever you're going to do a solid rebuild is draft your core, and then you can fill in spots with free agents or trades, such as like a Josh Reddick, Marwin Gonzalez, Evan Gattis, Brian McCann. And that lineup is just absolutely stacked. And they didn't lose anybody last year. Now, they didn't bring anybody new in, but they didn't really have to. I mean, their offense scored, let me see here, almost 900 runs last year. And the only piece they really lost was Carlos Beltran, and that's because he retired. So now they can slot in and Evan Gaddis at full-time DH, or even if they wanted to use the DH kind of as a position to give guys days off. Whenever you have someone like Marwin Gonzalez who can be so versatile, I think that lineup is just so nicely set up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not only did they get it done last year, but they got it done historically last year. I mean, they were the best offense in baseball last year. And if you're a stats person, it's right there for you. They scored the most runs, 896. They had the fewest strikeouts, 1,087, and that's in 17% of their appearances, which the next team was 19%, and their offense was down in the 20s. They had the second most home runs behind the Yankees at 238, the highest batting average at .282, the best slugging percentage at .978. And I mean, they were the fourth best modern baseball offenses ever.
Wow.
And that's behind the 27, 30, and 31 Yankees. And, you know, that team had Ruth and Gehrig on it. But fourth best offense ever in the league. And they crushed the ball. And not only did they crush the ball, they pitched well too. So, I mean,
yeah,
I have them as my favorites again.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you look at their pitching rotation, and they already had Keuchel, who as long as healthy, I mean, the guy, he's not going to get you a ton of strikeouts, but he works around the zone perfectly and can then do so many ground balls. Then they traded for Justin Verlander in August last year, and he came over and just he was the second best pitcher in the second half last year, according to Roster Resource. So then you go ahead and get the second best pitcher in the second half, and he obviously helped them win a World Series. They have Charlie Morton, who was, I mean, he just turned it around last year after what a career. I mean, I think he added 4 miles per hour on his fastball last year coming over to Houston. You've got a young guy, Lance McCullers, who has a devastating curveball. And then you have a Brad Peacock, who was awesome in the rotation, so he was scheduled to be their fifth starter. But not only that, they go and trade for Garrett Cole, who was the Pirates' ace.
Yeah, and it's a real head scratcher if you're the GM for Houston, because you're just looking at your papers and you're just telling yourself, I mean, what else can I do to upgrade? And it's not much. Like, I just feel bad for Colin McHugh because he's a really good pitcher, and right now they don't have a spot for him. So, and who do you even trade him for? Their relievers are good. They have 5 good starting pitchers. Their offense everywhere is amazing. They have good backups. I just don't know what they're going to do. I guess they can always keep him around, but it's kind of a waste of talent, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have maybe Colin McHugh and Brad Peacock stay in the bullpen. Maybe have like a 2 or 3 inning role every night, kind of use them whenever they need to in that fireman role. And like you said, the bullpen was probably the biggest weakness last year. They still have Ken Giles, who was dominant as a closer. They have Chris Davinsky, who came out. I mean, he just shut it down, and he can go multiple innings a night. And then they go out and sign Joe Smith, and they get Hector Rondon from the Cubs. So if that was their one weakness, they still filled it. They still filled it up. The only thing, They only have one lefty in the bullpen with Tony Sipp. So that might be something that they can acquire at the deadline, but that's not going to be something that they're going to be sweating until that point. They'll be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, they're doing all this with, probably also one of the shortest MVPs in the history of the league as well, and Jose Altuve, who just put up monster numbers and had a 7.5 wins above replacement last year, and that's, I mean, 6+ is MVP caliber. And last week we kind of should have went over a little bit what WAR means. Basically, a wins above replacement is they take their batting runs, so how many RBIs they have, their base running runs, so how many they score, their fielding runs, so how they stop in the field, and then they have a adjustment for the league as well as an adjustment for replacement runs, which is the average of replacement players, and that's how you kind of calculate it, and then you divide it by how many runs that they have during their wins. So, and 7.5 is ridiculously unheard of, and he just had an amazing year last year, and I mean, he's just been trending up each year He went from 4.6 to 6.8, now to 7.5. So I'm kind of scared to see what he does this year, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Tuve, the guy's power's been coming up. Now his stolen bases have stayed around the same while his powers went up. And him being in that lineup is just so awesome because you're going to see a breakout, I think, of Alex Bregman. Now, he started off slow last year, had a major second half, and then as you mentioned with Carlos Correa, he had an amazing first half and then got hurt in the second half. I think if Jose Altuve can play 160 games this year with Alex Bregman and Carlos Correa around him in the order, I would love to see him score 110 runs and even drive in maybe 90 to 100 runs himself.
Yeah, and how nuts is it that Carlos Correa was their second best player, and he only played in 109 games because he had that injury. His numbers in the first half were just ridiculous, and he's still young. He's 22, 23 years old. Bregman as well, 23. And, we'll see if Marwin, Gonzalez is for real from that insane year that he had as well. But the real question for me with the Houston Astros is not are they going to get back there, is just what are they going to do with McHugh? And if they can, I don't even know what they would need, to be honest. They have everything shored up. Maybe a better DH. Evan Gattis is okay, but their lineup is just stacked everywhere.
Yeah, and the crazy part is if you're like, well, they won the World Series, but maybe they're getting older. Out of their four core guys, George Springer, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve, and Carlos Correa, the oldest guy is George Springer, who's 28 years old. So I think you can expect this team, as long as everybody stays healthy, to be battling it out for the AL for the crown of the AL for a long time.
Yeah, it must be really nice to have NLCS MVP in Verlander, an ALCS MVP in Verlander, a World Series MVP in George Springer, and your league MVP in Jose Altuve. And I just think that with everything there and the pickup of Garrett Cole, they're definitely. I don't know if they're going to lose a game next year, to be honest. They are, but it's getting close to thinking that. George Springer went 11 for 29 with 3 doubles, 5 home runs, and 7 RBIs, becoming just the third player to hit 5 home runs in a single fall classic. And he just had an amazing playoffs.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to. I know some people like, and we'll talk about it, what the Los Angeles Angels did this year. But I still have the Astros winning that division next year.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the Los Angeles Angels, that's the next team on the bucket who could definitely give them a run for the money because they've made a lot of big increases to their team. Obviously the most notable is the Shohei Ohtani picking him up and winning that sweepstakes, but. They go out there and make some weird decisions. I know whenever they got Zach Cozart, I was kind of like, what are they going to do? Because they have Andrade Simmons playing shortstop. But apparently they're going to put Cozart at third base, which he's, never really played. They get Ian Kinsler for second base. So, then you just top that off on, the best player in the league, Mike Trout. And that's, not an understatement. He really is the best player in the league.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Of course, I'm a Nationals fan. I'm a big Bryce Harper fan. So Bryce Harper and Mike Trout have always been, kind of compared to each other. And, I love Bryce Harper, but Mike Trout's the best player in the game. There's no doubt about it. What he does in the field, what he does with the bat, what he does on the bases, and what he's done for a while. Now, not this year. He has a good lineup around him. But the last couple of years, he hasn't had, a good lineup around him. It's been him and Albert Pujols, really, and that's been it. The Angels went out. They got Justin Upton. They got Ian Kinsler. They got Zach Cozart. I think they're kind of, when a lot of teams are rebuilding, they're kind of picking the pieces off the rebuilding teams. Even though the pieces are older, they're not having to give up a lot to get them. Now, obviously, with the Angels, the biggest question mark has to be the starting rotation.
Yeah, definitely. Just spot on Mike Trout again, like I was saying. Here's a guy who's never won a playoff game. Ever, because they just don't have anything to go around them. Those years they had, Weaver, they had Lackey in there, they had some good pitchers, but they just didn't have it all together. And he had a 6.9 WAR last year, and he only played in 114 games because he himself also had, was out 6 to 8 weeks with a thumb injury. And, he put up big numbers, 33 home runs. He was just mashing the ball. So he has the second highest wins above replacement ever between anyone up to the age of 25. So now that they're putting people around him, we'll see if he can actually get there. But you're right, the starting rotation is a big key, and they really haven't done anything to shore that up because, I mean, Ohtani is, the rated number 1 prospect in baseball by MLB, but he hasn't pitched in the majors yet, and, he obviously wants to hit and play the field. That was the big thing for him signing, and we'll see how they're going to do. They're talking about going to a 6-man rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing with Ohtani is going to try to be to get him adjusted to Major League Baseball. Since in Japan they do a 6-man rotation, obviously you're not facing as good of hitters as he will be in Major League Baseball. I think they have an ace in Garrett Richards. He just can't stay healthy. And then, as you mentioned with Ohtani, I mean, obviously he's a better pitcher than hitter, in my opinion, and from the stuff I've heard and talked to people about. But he wants to play the field as well. Now, the only problem with that is you have a C.J. Cron for first base, and Albert Pujols, he's just a shell of himself now. He really shouldn't be playing the field. So are they going to have Ohtani play first? Are they going to have Pujols play first and Ohtani DH? That's going to be the tough thing that's going to have to try to figure them out because, like you said, the whole reason Ohtani went is because he wanted to hit too. He didn't want to just pitch.
Right. And, they have him as, above average hitter too with power. So I'm thinking that, they're going to have him DH. You got C.J. Cron at first base. Their infield is a little weird because you got Kinsler and Simmons up the middle, and then Cozart, like we said, at third. They still have Luis Valbuena, so who knows what's going to happen there. But, they have probably one of the best catchers in the league in Maldonado, and he won the Gold Glove last year. So, their outfield is definitely fine with Cole Calhoun, Trout, and, Justin Upton. So, yeah, we'll see what they do with Ohtani. I feel like they should let him have the DH. Pujols is just, he's just up there. It's just, he looks terrible a lot of the years. He can still hit sometimes, but I don't see him lasting another couple years.
Yeah, I know, and they're paying him so much money. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Looking at their rotation, they have Garrett Richards, who, like I said, I think can be an ace, but he's been having some shoulder, some arm problems, so you kind of have to put an asterisk next to that. You've got Ohtani slotted in at the 2 spot, which could be probably as good as an ace, but he also could kind of struggle adjusting and maybe be more like a 4 or a 5. You have Matt Shoemaker, J.C. Ramirez, and Tyler Skaggs. Obviously, with Skaggs, you also have Andrew Heaney, but both of them have had really bad injury problems trying to get to the majors. Yeah. So I think the rotation is going to be a big question mark. And then when you get to their bullpen, they acquired Jim Johnson from the Braves, and they have Blake Parker, Cam Bedrosian, and Kenyon Middleton, who are all interesting pieces, but I don't think they have a stud closer in there.
Right, yeah, and that's definitely for sure. If Ohtani can't adjust to the majors with his pitching, then they're just going to have a horrible, horrible year with pitching come, starting and rotation. Now, they could always just, if he's hitting the ball, they can always just keep him as a hitter and develop his pitching. That's the one upside about him is he can really, rake the ball. But as you see with a lot of these players who come over into the majors, there is an adjustment rate. And we'll see how far it goes before they, pull the plug or, say, hey, don't pitch, or we're just going to play you in the field, or, vice versa. So we'll definitely have to see how it turns out. I definitely think that this is a wild card team if the pitching can hold up or the pitching can get to where, they're projected to be.
Yeah, I think they definitely are going to be one of the most exciting teams this year. Obviously, whenever you have Mike Trout on the squad, and like you said, with the pickups they've made, and everybody's going to be watching Ohtani, I think there's going to be a lot of people on the East Coast who are going to try to stay up late to watch them over there on the West Coast. Like I said, who do you think is going to get some saves for them, or do you think they pick up somebody like a Greg Holland that's out there as a free agent?
I think they gotta. They have to pick up a Greg Holland. They have to, or even like maybe some sort of weird trade for a low end closer. I'm not too sure who all is out there that could pick up for a trade slack, but they just I don't know from where they're sitting right now. I just don't know who they would have to close it out. Blake Parker's there, but he's not really that much of a closer. He only had 8 saves, so I mean they may turn it over to him, but they might just go closer by committee, which is totally fine to do as well.
Now, I think an interesting option could be they could try to hold the bullpen until June or July, and what if they went after Zach Britton?
Yeah, definitely. Now, the one thing with them is I don't know if they're really ready to relinquish some pieces that they have to get Zach Britton. And even if Zach Britton's going to be healthy, these last couple of years, he's just been injury plagued. So, and it's going to be just a rental as well because he's a free agent come next year too. So
yeah, you're exactly right. The Angels have had a really bad farm system for the last couple of years. I think they're finally getting it put back together, especially with the pickup of Kevin Mayton from the Atlanta Braves, who they lost. They have a couple prospects and obviously Ohtani. So you're right. Maybe they want to try to hold on. I think a Greg Holland could be a nice fit there. But we'll just have to wait and see what they end up doing.
Yeah, definitely. And the big thing that's going to help Mike Trout out is the 2 guys they got in there, Cozart and Kinsler, are guys who know how to get on base. And that's one thing. If they get on base, then Trout can just bring them home. And that's something that they've had trouble with. They haven't had guys to get on base because they do strike out a lot. And, if nobody's on base for Trout, then he can't really get a lot of RBIs.
Yeah, exactly right. The Kinsler, especially if they're going to bat Kinsler leadoff like Roster Resource has, then he just needs to worry about getting on base. Mike Trout, obviously, he's going to get on base. And then you've got Justin Upton, who, kind of has roller coaster season. Seems like he's really good sometimes, and then he struggles a lot. But I think up and down, that lineup's going to be pretty good. Andrelton Simmons had a good year, actually, with the bat last year because, he's always going to bring it with the glove. And like you said with Cozart, it'll be interesting to see how he can play some third base. It shouldn't be too much of an adjustment coming from shortstop, but still, when you've never done anything, there's probably going to be a little bit of a period that's going to take some getting used to.
Yeah, definitely. And, he had an amazing year last year as well. Had a, 5.0 WAR and 24 home runs and just was raking the ball. Had like a huge average, and we'll see if that transition to third base is something that throws him off or if he just, goes right into it. So other than the Angels, our next team on the list here is a team that's kind of flying under the radar. You say the Angels are, a team that might surprise you this year. I definitely think that the Oakland Athletics are a team that's going to surprise me. They're really young. Their bullpen is really deep right now. Their lineup is super powerful. They got a lot of young guys. So that's a team that I think that definitely people should watch out for.
Yeah, I think they remind me a little bit of the Padres, who we talked about last week, except this team actually has a good starting rotation, and they also have some exciting pieces. They acquired Stephen Piscotty from the Cardinals this offseason, which is I'm not sure how much you know, but Stephen Piscotty's mom actually suffers with ALS, and she actually lives on the West Coast. So Piscotty's going to be able to come closer to it and his mom and take care of her, which is a really great story. Good job on the Cardinals to make that happen. Just recently, they acquired Brandon Moss again from the Kansas City Royals. They got Ryan Butcher, the left-handed relief pitcher, in the same deal with Brandon Moss. So I think, like you said, they have some interesting pieces. Obviously, with Chris Davis in the middle of their lineup, he obviously brings the power. Matt Olson was awesome last year. He didn't get a lot of playing time, but when he did, he really hit some home runs for him. And I'm a big fan of Sean Manaea and Daniel Megden in their starting rotation. I think they could be really exciting as long as they're healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Their starting pitchers are good and young. They have really good bullpen right now with those pickups and what they already had. And they have a lot of young guys out there, too. I mean, you just look at their lineup and you're kind of like, I don't really recognize any of these guys. I mean, sure, there's Jed Lowry and, Marcus Semien. A lot of the guys that they did have are gone. Vogt, who was their catcher, is gone. So they have Josh Fegley and Bruce Maxwell back there doing the catching. A young guy, Bruce Maxwell, not even over 100 games in the league right now, but he's slated to be their starting catcher and take 65% of the catching load. Third base, you switch over there, and you got Matt Chapman, who 84 games in the league, and he's slated to be their third baseman. So if this team can be as good as they were in the minors and not have a big adjustment, I think they're definitely going to be fun to watch because, 6 out of the 9 of their starting lineup is fresh in the league.
Yeah, they're going to be a really young, exciting team. I think maybe not this year, but maybe in a couple years you could definitely see them make some moves. Obviously, the Athletics are always going to have the problem with not being able to spend as much money as most teams. So Billy Bean kind of has to work with his hands tied. But speaking of the end of their bullpen, Blake Trinan, the old Washington Nationals relief pitcher who they acquired in July, he came over to the Athletics and he shut the door down. He had a 2.13 ERA with the Athletics. He throws a 99-mile-an-hour sinker. If you watch any best pitches of the year clips, he's going to be in there at least a couple of times because of that sinker slider combo is just devastating. Now, of course, his control can get all over the place, or sometimes, like he struggled with the Nationals, he just doesn't have it all the time. But when this guy's on, he's one of the best relief pitchers in the game.
Yeah, definitely. And that relief core and what they picked up with Butcher is just going to be super explosive. And then you just add that into, they played good ball last year. You look at their stats and you're thinking, they didn't really look like they did. They went 75-87, finished last in this division, but they played 500 baseball for the last 3 months of the season and had one of the best offenses in the second half. So, some of these teams better watch out because, if they put it together, they could definitely shock a lot of people.
And I think the one thing with the Athletics is they have some prospects that are really on the cusp of coming up. They have starting pitcher from the left side, AJ Puck, who I think could be last year's Josh Hader. He could be this year's Josh Hader because, that guy just brings some heat from the left side, even put him in the bullpen and it could be locked down. They have shortstop prospect Franklin Barreto, who has recently fallen down prospects list a little bit. But, he played a lot of AAA last year. I think he's scheduled to start the year at AAA, but I could expect to see him in the majors at any time. And then the two Yankees that they acquired, the two prospects from the Yankees they acquired in the Sonny Gray trade, Jorge Mateo and Dustin Fowler, both have really nice speed options. Jorge Mateo has been a promising prospect for a while now. So it'll be interesting to see when they bring these prospects up and integrate them in that young lineup already.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the good things that they have is they have that that flexibility to do so because they're not tied down by contracts. It's Billy B, and obviously everyone's seen Moneyball probably by now, so we know how they operate. And with Chris Davis there, with the K, of course, not the Orioles one, but yeah, he can really crush the ball. So I feel like I really want to watch some Angels baseball, but I feel like I want to watch some Athletics some more.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I can't blame you one bit. Now they just need to get him a new ballpark because that ballpark needs some work, man.
Yeah, it does. That's one of the places that I want to go to because that ballpark just seems awkward to sit in, to say the least. I just want to sit in the most awkward place, like maybe out in center field, right where it kind of hangs over. So maybe I'll get there before they get rid of it.
And I think one thing you have to give Athletic fans credit for is those fans are loyal. Even though they don't have a great ballpark, and even when their team isn't the best and they're always losing talent to the Red Sox and the Yankees of the world, if you watch a game at night, they're always coming up with fun chants. They've got awesome signs. I love the Athletics fan base. They just seem like
yeah, they're definitely one of those fan bases that is loyal to a cause, and they might get rewarded this year. So staying on the West Coast in this division, we do have the Seattle Mariners, who they have done some things this offseason. And probably one of the strangest things is, they acquired D. Gordon from the Marlins. And you're thinking, well, they have Robinson Cano, so what is that all about? Well, they're putting D. Gordon in center field, and that's something that's definitely going to be interesting to watch since he's never played outside of the infield ever.
I think as long as Jerry DiPoto is their GM, he likes to make trades like most of us do in fantasy baseball. This guy is always making a deal whenever it's possible. And I remember, like you said, seeing the D. Gordon news pop up on my phone, and everybody's like, well, they've got Robinson Cano. And then instantly they just say, well, D. Gordon's going to be our center fielder because he's fast pretty much. And D. Gordon's I don't think he's played center field since probably high school or college. But it seems like from what I was reading about it, it seems like he's taken to it pretty well. I mean, obviously, doing it in practice is going to be different than a game, but just having D Gordon as far as being in the lineup, that's going to be a big key for them. I mean, just getting on base with some speed. You've got Segura who can steal some bases, get on base. Obviously, Robinson Cano and Nelly Cruz are getting older, but I think they can still produce. You've got the ever consistent Kyle Seager. I mean, just up and down the lineup, it's pretty stacked. They picked up Ryan Healy from the Athletics to be their first baseman. Not a star lineup, not a star acquisition, but still a good pickup. And I think up and down that lineup, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the things I was going to key in on is Ryan Healy coming over from the Athletics, and I mean, he's only been in the league a couple years and only had a handful. I mean, last year was his first blown, full-fledged, year in the league. And, I mean, he hit 25 home runs and 600 plate appearances. Now, his average was .271, which, wasn't too bad. His on-base percentage was a little low. It was .302. He still strikes out a lot. But I mean, in that lineup, we'll see if it can change anything, because he did all that with the Athletics and, that terrible lineup they had last year before, that second half. And so we'll get to see what he does with some power hitters in there. And, Nelson Cruz, I love Nelson Cruz to death. And that's one of the things I hate the Orioles about is the fact that they just didn't want to give him that extra year for him to stay. And, now he's just been, raking the ball every year since, and actually won the Silver Slugger for DH role, and was voted the best DH in the league for the Edgar Martinez DH award. So this lineup's definitely good. We'll have to definitely see how D Gordon does in the outfield, because it could go into bad news Bears real quick.
Yeah, and I think with Cruz, I mean, that guy is almost 38 years old, and he can still, and everybody thought, because he was playing in Texas, and then, the Orioles, when he signed with the Mariners, they were like, man, maybe that ballpark's too big, maybe he won't hit as many home runs, and he hasn't stopped for a second. That guy can crush the baseball.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now, Robinson Cano isn't, the Robinson Cano of old, because, I mean, he is getting old. But their lineup is really good. They have, Jean Segura, which, we were talking about last week, leaving from the Diamondbacks. And, I mean, Mitch Haniger's out there in the outfield. He's a nice young guy. Kyle Seager, of course. And then Mike Zunino, who actually had an amazing year last year. And we can see if he can put up those numbers again. Now, just like everything else, you're not in that top 10 of starting pitching, that's where it's going to hurt you. You can have the greatest lineup ever, but as you see with the Dodgers, how we talked about last week, is you don't have to have a good lineup to get there. You just have to have good pitching, and that's another weak point, is Seattle doesn't really have good pitchers. They have Felix Hernandez, and then behind that, that's kind of the big dip in the next best.
Yeah, I think I got to be honest. If I was rooting for a team to sign Ohtani, it was the Seattle Mariners, because I think with his starting pitching in that rotation, I feel like it would have been nice. They have a he's not as young as you might think. He's 29, but an up-and-coming ace in James Paxton, as long as he can stay healthy. That guy had an amazing year last year as long as he was on the field. King Felix, he's only 32, about to be 32, but I think obviously with how much from when he came up in the league at 19 years old, he had almost, I mean, it looks like 10 straight 200 inning seasons. Of course, you're eventually going to break down, and I think everybody roots for King Felix. It's awesome how they have the King's Court and how he was there for so long, but I think it's pretty much the beginning of the end for King Felix, unless he can, like Verlander did, learn how to pitch with diminished velocity. The rest of their rotation is just kind of going to be a bunch of stopgaps, really, because you have Mike Leake, Erasmo Ramirez, and Marco Gonzalez. I don't think any of those guys stand out. I don't think they're going to be your workhorse. They're not going to be your ace. I think they're kind of just depth guys. I really would have liked to have seen maybe them go after Yu Darvish, because I feel like that would have been a really nice fit. But I just don't think they have enough money to afford that right now.
Yeah, definitely. And they do have a nice young pitcher in Ariel Miranda, who actually comes over from the Orioles, because I remember whenever they traded over for Wade Miley, they traded Ariel Miranda over to the Mariners. And, I mean, last year he wasn't so great. He had a 5 ERA. He went 8-7, started 29 games. But we'll have to see how that definitely goes. But you're right. I mean, Hernandez is kind of getting up there, and unless he can kind of change, it's it's going to be bad news bears all over it, not only in the outfield, but at the starting pitching as well.
Yeah, and I think they really need. I would really like to see them make a move for starting pitching because, like we said, their lineup's good enough to win. I think if they have a really good starting pitching, Nelson Cruz and Robinson Cano are getting old, so you kind of need to take advantage of while the window's still open. Their bullpen's really good. Have a young 24-year-old closer, Edwin Diaz, who kind of lost the role for a couple weeks last year, but then got it back because the guy throws 101, has a great slider. They picked up Juan Nicasio as a free agent, who I think is going to be a really good setup man. The rest of their bullpen, they have some guys, David Phelps, Nick Vincent, who are good, 6th, 7th inning guys, and they have a good end of the bullpen. I think the main thing with these guys is just going to be their starting pitching. And from what I'm looking at, I don't see very many starting pitching prospects or even relief pitching prospects that they have that could come fill in the role. As you said, Ariel Miranda's not bad. He's lefty. I think he could be a good 5. They re-signed Hisashi Iwakuma back, but he's almost 37 and he hasn't been what he used to be. So I think really it's just going to be making sure that starting rotation can hold up. And if they could do that, they could be a little bit better than what people are thinking this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if they go out there, they get an Alex Cobb, they get a Lance Lynn, one of those mid guys to put behind Hernandez and Paxton. I think they could definitely give this division a run for its money as well. I don't think they're going to get a Yu Darvish. I mean, most recent reports have the Brewers in the race on that one. Arrieta, I just don't see that in their range. So a smaller guy like Alex Cobb or a Lance Lynn, definitely if they could pick up one of those guys, I think they'd be good to go. But I mean, nobody's been moving on the free agent list recently, so there's still a lot of hope out there for a lot of these teams we've been discussing.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and they're going to have to start signing eventually. I think pitchers and catchers report in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So like you said, a Lance Lynn or an Alex Cobb could be a good piece. I mean, you still have Paxton at the top. If King Felix can just give you a 4 ERA, you'd take it. And then if you can put somebody like a Lance Lynn or an Alex Cobb or both of them in there, then you're really talking about a team who I think could really push for a wild card spot.
Yeah, definitely, and I totally agree with you. We'll definitely have to see how it turns out, but I don't know. I still think the Oakland Athletics might finish above the Mariners this year. That's my bold prediction.
That is, I like it.
And so the last team on the list here is going to be the Texas Rangers, who I think their offense is amazing as well. This whole division's offense is out of control. I could see the whole division just putting up historic numbers this year. Their rotation looks like it's set currently. They have Cole Hamels, they have Martin Perez getting healthy again. They picked up Doug Fister. They have Matt Moore, which they acquired from the Giants, and they also have Mike Minor. And one of the things that they did recently, a couple of days ago, was they signed left-hander Jonathan Neese to a minor league contract with an invitation to spring training. So he could be in there as the 5th starter. Now, if Cole Hamels can get back to the Cole Hamels of old, I definitely think this rotation is going to be really good. Their hitters just need to really come around and do it for them this year.
I've got to say, I think I'm on the opposite on you with this one. I'm really worried about their starting rotation. I think Cole Hamels could be solid. I'm not against you. I mean, 34. The problem is in that ballpark, it seems like homers just fly out, and I think Matt Moore is going to get crushed. He gave up 1.4 home runs per 9 with the Giants. Which and the Giants have a big ballpark, and you're pitching in the NL. I think Matt Moore is going to get absolutely demolished in this ballpark. I was really confused as to why the Rangers went with him. Mike Minor was a really good reliever. Way back he was going to be a good young starter for the Braves before he had some injuries. He was a good relief pitcher for the Royals. They signed Doug Fister, who's a good ground ball pitcher, 34 years old. He had a good year with Boston. We're going to have to see what he does. And actually, Roster Resource has their 5th starter as Matt Bush, who was the closer for some time last year. Now,
wow.
He had some problems ever since he got drafted in and out of the league. He's 32 years old. The guy can still bring some heat. I think he throws 98, 97. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, like you said, you like the bullpen. I mean, you like the rotation. I think I'm on the other side. I'm worried about the rotation, but I think we can both agree that their lineup can bring some power.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a very interesting point about the rotation. I mean, obviously Matt Moore has had, these last couple years not very good years, to say the least. And you're right. I mean, he is a fly ball pitcher. These last couple of years, his home run to fly ball ratio has been up there, and in that ballpark, it could spell disaster. In the last 3 years, he's had above a 4 ERA. So we'll definitely see. I mean, if he can turn it around, that is. I mean, granted, Cole Hamels has to really step back up into Cole Hamill form. Matt Moore has to turn it around. And, I mean, I think Martin Perez is a really good pitcher that they have as well. And he's obviously shown that he can pitch in that ballpark when healthy. So I agree. I think the starting pitching is going to be good, but that's definitely a very interesting point.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how it turns out. But on their offensive side, I think they have 3, even 4 of some of the most exciting young players in baseball. They have Nomar Mazara, who's only 22 years old. Average wasn't great last year, but man, that guy had some power. I think if you look at, that's kind of the story about their whole lineup almost with the younger guys is what will their average be, because they're going to bring the power. You've got Nomar Mazara, Joey Gallo, Brugman, and Odor. I mean, if those 3 can just equally, if they can each hit 250, you're really in a good spot, because Nomar Mazara last year, he had 20 home runs, 101 RBIs as a 22-year-old. And then you've got their DH, who I think they acquired from the Dodgers last year in the Yu Darvish trade, Willie Calhoun. I'm really excited to see how he does as well. So I think their lineup has some really exciting pieces in it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure Willie Calhoun is going to get a lot of starts there at the DH position. They still have Senshu Chu out there as well to DH. Their outfield. I think they're actually going to be putting Willie Calhoun in left field as the starting left fielder. So I think he's slated to go out there. You have Delina DeShields in center, Mazara right field, and then their infield is definitely a little bit on the older side at third base, and Adrian Beltre, who seems like 39 years old, that he could play for probably another 20 years. It looks like that guy impresses me. It's just I think he's close to 39. I think he's like 38, but he just had a decent year for only playing 94 games. He hit 17 home runs.
And how do you not root for that guy? Every time I see him in the dugout, everybody's either laughing with him or they're trying to touch his head, which obviously he freaks out about.
Oh yeah, you can't touch that guy's
head.
So
how do you? I just don't know how you don't root for this guy who's been doing it for so long. And like you said, he still put up solid numbers. Now, I mean, a 312 batting average, 383 on base. Had 17 home runs in only 94 games. So obviously the drop-off is beginning or it's already here. But, I mean, I still think he could be a solid option, especially in that ballpark and in that lineup.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so much fun watching Andrus and him over there. I mean, fly balls, they kind of just the things you shouldn't be doing out on the baseball field, because you could definitely drop the ball or something. But they have a lot of fun out there. And their offense, I mean, last year wasn't that great. I just don't know what happened. They got a lot of stars that can definitely hit the ball, but they just weren't clicking. So, I mean, they were starting to put it together. Obviously, they lost Yu Darvish. So, whenever you take a pitcher like that out of the equation and someone that you look upon to win you those games, it is kind of deflating from a clubhouse side.
And I think they've actually, I know the Brewers have been, but I believe the Rangers have also been rumored about getting Yu Darvish back, or at least trying to. Now, if you could bring a Yu Darvish back, slot Cole Hamels into the 2, maybe Matt Moore into the 3. I still don't love their rotation, but I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. I think a spot we can both agree on, though, is the bullpen's going to be a problem.
Yeah, the bullpen is definitely going to be a problem. I think the bullpen has always been a problem for the Rangers, and it's one of those issues that I think that it's a little too late to try to get solved, because a lot of relievers are actually getting off the market. So it's one of those things that they're going to have to do in-house to upgrade, and if they're pitching just like everything else in this division, unless you're named Houston Astros, doesn't really come around, you're not going to have a very good year.
Yeah, I think the thing, I mean, right now they have Alex Claudio scheduled as their closer according to Roster Resource, who is kind of Darren O'Day, but from the left side. I think his average fastball doesn't break 80. And they've got Jake Diekman, who now he's also from the left side. He throws about 97. They have a young guy, 24, Keona Killa. I think he's probably going to be the closer if I had to guess. When Martin Perez comes back, I believe he actually fractured his non-throwing elbow. I believe it was actually in a freak accident, if I remember correctly. Let me look it up really quick. Yeah, but they could bring him back, put him maybe in the 5 spot, and then maybe move Matt Bush back to the bullpen, and it's getting a little bit better. But, man, I really think they need to acquire some pieces for that bullpen or, maybe go sign a Greg Holland. They need to do something because, like you said, there's a lot of the relief pitchers, when there was a lot of them out there, a lot of them are gone. So they're going to have to either figure something out, bring up some AAA starters that maybe haven't been successful starters and put them in the bullpen. But if they actually want a chance to compete, especially in that division where you have the Astros, Angels, Mariners, Athletics, who could all be interesting teams, I think the Astros really need to work on that pitching staff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are some relief pitchers out there that could definitely help them out. I mean, there's a Craig Breslow out there I think could help them out a lot. Joaquin Bennett is out there. So, I mean, we'll just have to see which direction they go in to try to get someone in there. But if they don't upgrade something, then I feel like they're just going to be at the bottom again.
Yep. There's not much out there. They got Greg Holland as the best relief pitcher on there. And then there's a whole bunch of them that are signed, maybe a Tony Watson, a Bud Norris, Matt Belisle. But other than that, they're going to have to figure something out in the trade market.
Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely thank you for coming again, getting us through this AL West here. Next week, that whenever we get together, we're going to just talk about the NL Central, since we can see if the Chicago Cubs can get back to the form a couple years ago, and definitely see if maybe Yu Darvish signs with the Brewers by that time.
Yeah, hopefully we have some different options to talk about. Maybe some people making some trades, making some signings. We can definitely dive in on the Christian Yelich trade. Thank you all again for all your support. Please leave comments, likes, everything. Just let us know, email us, comment on the YouTube. But just thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, and thanks for joining me, Logan.
Thank you, man.